So if you haven't seen our channel before, we make props that are made to look and work the way that they do in the movies or games that they come from. And then take it to another level by making something that looks in-world. And typically I do this during anniversaries. For example, every May we make a Star Wars episode, and then during October, November we'll do a Ghostbusters episode. And the first one was just before Afterlife came out, and so we made the Ecto one the way it looks in Afterlife. And I wanted to release it just before the movie came out. And up until that point, the only reference for the car and for the movie was a trailer where they just showed short clips of the car quickly driving through fields or through an old town. And then it was intercut with these black cards talking about the movie. And so I thought, well, that's what I want to do. I want to reenact that using my own Ecto 1. And luckily, I live in a location that looks a lot like the Afterlife location. So there's a lot of fields and small towns and water towers. And so as soon as I was done with building it, I had about 2 days that I would have to film it in and edit it to be able to get it out on time. And so I threw the kids into the car and we headed straight to the nearest field. So as we're driving through the field, my son's holding it kind of like this, just outside the window. And then we're filming it. We tried to film it just holding the camera, but eventually found out I had to mount it in order for it to be even enough for me to get the right angles and to cover it up later on. And that's all it was. It was just filming the car as we drove in our car in front of a field. And the key to doing any of this too is you get as much footage as you can. So you need at least 3 times to 5 times the footage of what you're planning to use. You know, you'll always have too much of what you don't want and you won't have enough of what you do. So it's better to just go as much as you can. Later what I did is I went into Photoshop and I created this long strip of, I think it was wheat or corn, and then blurred it and animated it, and then put that right in front of the car in just a way that it would cover up my son's hand. And then at the same time, I also made it go up and down with the car, so it looks like it's kind of going up and down in hills and things. It looks pretty good. It came out really well, and that's all the more that I did with that one. Then we headed to a dirt road. At that point in time, I had my son, again, sitting in the back of the car inside the hatchback. So the hatchback's open, and then we're just driving along and he's holding the car out like this, so kind of holding it from the very back wheels, just like this, and then the camera's just in front of it. Now the downside is that that's fully within the car, and so it didn't have the right shading quite that it needed to. At the same time, the weather was bad enough outside that it kind of mixed in. It looked fairly natural, and it allowed the lights to show up better on the car as they were kind of flashing things. So that was all pretty natural. I don't remember having to do anything additional to that. I think that's all the more that is. It's just a shot out the back of the car. The next scene was literally me holding the car again by the back wheels, kind of like this, and then while I'm holding a camera, walking along the path of this dirt road and trying to get it from angles as I'm moving it so that it looks natural, like it's actually driving onto the road, off this dirt road and onto another road, and turning in a fairly natural way as well. And I did this a lot of times. I'm out in the middle of a bunch of fields, farmers driving by, seeing a grown man going, because you have to make the noises when you move the car like that, right? And honestly, in the end, it came out pretty good. The problem was that by this point you could see the side of the wheels, and because of that you can see that they're not moving, they're not spinning or anything, and they're not turning either. And so for that reason I went back in and I blurred the wheels, and also I think animated them slightly so they looked like they were turning a little bit as it turned. But that's all the more I did with that as well, and again it came out pretty good. The next scene was a little more involved, a little more difficult. The big difficult thing at this point in time is that I can't walk with it in the actual road. Even if I got into the road, then the perspective wasn't right because the car would be too close versus the road. It would look like it was on the wrong side of the road. I mean, literally I had to be far enough from the road while holding it up with the camera to make it look correct. But the downside with walking on the sidewalk downtown was that you can see there are poles and cars and things like that are between us and the road. So Basically, I had to find the clearest areas to walk along and also do it at the right times when there was less traffic. And then again, you know, I'm walking along downtown a long ways because of course I'd have to speed it up later on. Walking the full length of the street downtown with everyone watching, going because again, you got to make the sound, you know, and then turning it and things in a way that looked natural. The problem was, again, some perspective changes and things. I would have to do this in 2 parts. So there's one part where I'm filming along one part of the street, and then there was another part where I'd have to do it from a stationary point, filming like this as it turns and goes like that. And the issue with that was I had to stitch them together somehow. So at one point in time, I have a pole that I animated that goes past and kind of covers that stitch a little bit, but you can tell it's changing scenes. And then also I took mailboxes and poles and trees and tried to also put those in front of the car as it passes, so it looks like, again, we're on the sidewalk, but the things are passing by us between the car and the camera. But my arm was in the way. It was clearly in the shot for that last turn, and it didn't look right. Plus, the wheels, again, aren't spinning, and they're not turning. So how in the world was the car turning? So I had to go back and paint out some things, and then I had to animate those wheels so it looked like they were actually turning and pulling in. You might have also noticed the pink things that are chasing the car. In the original movies, they always had these like pink phantasms, and I tried to create the same effect literally by using photographs that I took of Twizzlers. Yep, Twizzlers put into different positions, and then I would brighten them up, put a blur on them, put a glow on them, and then animate them, and it looks kind of like the same effect. And I kind of chased the car about halfway through, and I gave up on it after that. I also did other shots from other angles. Again, I did as much filming as I could in all these places. And so there's a lot more that I didn't use or just didn't work for me. So it looked good. It looked good at this point. It looks natural, it looks fast, it looks pretty good. But there's something a lot still missing. When it came to the car itself, I couldn't find sounds that sounded right. Even the actual car sound, when I went back and was able to find some sounds of this car driving in real life, it didn't sound right. It needed to have a better engine in it. It needed something that sounded more like almost like a race car or a hot rod. I found that the best sounds were a motorcycle combined with some sounds of screeching and things that were from a semi. And that's how I achieved it. You got a combo of those sounds that sound like the actual car in the movie. And who knows, maybe that's how they got the sounds of the car in the movie. The trailer had a lot of loud noise that kind of caught your attention, and the best thing that you want at the very beginning of a YouTube film is something that catches people's attention. And so very literally, the first sound that you hear is also, one of the sounds is me going like that, clapping my hands. It's just that. Like if you were to catch somebody's attention, that. And so you first hear that clap noise, and then I integrated that with some different stock music and sounds, and in the end, this is what it looked like. I started planning for last year's a little bit more in advance because I knew I wanted to do something bigger. Actually, prior to even this, my original plan was to go out and use a PKE meter that I had made and measure ghosts in some kind of ghost hunting expedition. And I happen to know some well-known ghost hunters. I thought, well, this would be a great opportunity for me to be able to go out and get some film. The problem was with COVID and some other things, a lot of these places that they tended to go to, they actually closed off. Like they wouldn't let extra people go there. There was all sorts of things that were still going on that kind of prevented us from being able to do different things. And then also during those seasons, you got too many people that are going out, and also some people that don't want, people like us coming in, I guess. And so it just didn't seem like a good opportunity. After seeing Paul Sunyoon Lee talk about his different proton packs that he's made, I was like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to just go for it. I'm going to go and do it. I'm going to do it with the one that's most popular to be able to get a hold of right now. and I'm going to show how easy it is to go through and modify it. And but I wanted to put it together in a haunted house. I was determined I was going to do it in a haunted house. And haunted houses aren't easy to get. Even though there's tons of them around here, the issue becomes that either A, they're owned by people and they, you know, because of danger, they don't want you coming in, or B, there are places where you have to pay to get in there and then they don't want you to ruin their other customers' experience. So I like to, you know, even these haunted hotels and things aren't easy to get into without running into people that don't want you, you know, leaving your room to do this sort of thing. I had one set up for a really scary haunted house. Truly, I mean, an actual house that's pretty creepy. Would have been pretty good content, I thought. But they told me I had to stay within one spot of one room because it was too dangerous to move around. So it wasn't like I could go throughout the house afterwards, which was my big picture. I wanted to be able to go out and at least make something that looks like a Ghostbusters experience. But something I do have a lot of around where I live is ghost towns. And I thought, you know, this is my opportunity to be able to move around and not have to worry too much about lighting or other things, because that was another issue, is having power inside of a haunted house without having to bring things in. And I figured it would be a lot easier too to get permission to do things. So that's what I decided to do. I picked out a town in particular that everybody seems to know here locally. They all know the stories. There's a lot of really horrible stories, real things that happen to real people, by the way, which always made me a little bit leery about also touching it, because, you know, real people died, real people, you know, had bad things happen to them. At the same time, the people that we're talking about were also really bad people, so it makes me feel a little bit more at ease about it and about going to their graveside dressed up as a Ghostbuster. And I'll tell you this too, the stories go way beyond what I talked about in the video. There's so many details, there's so much information. And the benefit is that there was so much press at that time that you can actually go back all the way back to then. And I put a link in the description of that video that has all the articles related to what happened and other things that were going on. And so first-hand accounts of people in the town and people that were there, that were involved, that you can read about. There's some people also that are just beyond belief. I mean, I talked about how the names of the people happen to be the same as the names of celebrities whose pictures I actually used in the video. That makes it kind of funny. James Taylor, Elizabeth Taylor. There was also this guy by the name of Texas Bill that was involved and stuff. And there's like a mafia situation. There's all these things that you can go back and read about. If you're interested, I say check it out. So I knew this was an interesting town, and I've been taken there before. And interestingly enough too, I don't know that I mentioned this, but after I'd gone there, I decided to try to go back with my family. Couldn't find the place. It was like it disappeared. I mean, I swear I followed the same directions and everything else. It's just hard to find if you don't know how to get there. And I knew every time that I had been there, it's weird things happen, just consistently. So I knew to expect that things would be weird, but this is where there's a backstory to this whole filming that is bizarre and interesting. And this is the closest thing I'll get to a scary story. So in the video, it looks like I just went out there, visited it, built the proton pack, fought some ghosts, and left. And that's not how it worked. I went out there actually 3 times. So the first time I went out there, I took my family with me, and we went and visited the people in the town to check with them to make sure that I could do all this. We also went to, they have like a visitor center there, and I went and talked to the couple that run that and got their information. I bought this book and things that tells me all about the town. Everyone that I talked to said, well, the downside is there's 2 groups of people. There's those that want to preserve the town, rebuild some of the buildings, you know, make it look the way it did back in the day, and make it more of a tourist trap, because the town's lost its fertility and they wanted to revitalize it. But there was a guy, and I never got to meet him, so I can't really speak to it, but the way they made it come across is if you go on his land, or if you go over there, he doesn't want these places to look good. He wants them to just crumble and die, and he doesn't want anyone looking around them. He you know, gave me this picture of a guy that would be out there with his rifle watching for me and not to step a foot on any of his land. And unfortunately, the majority of the town is on his land, including the old train depot, which is one of the coolest buildings that's there.
That's about as close as we can come to it.
And so that became my only problem. Everyone else was fine with me walking around dressed up as a Ghostbuster, going into the graveyard. In fact, they encouraged it. But they all made sure to tell me that if I got anywhere near this guy's land, there was a very good chance that something bad could happen. So don't overstep the line. And he's put a lot of things behind the fences too. So you'll see a lot of shots where I'm shooting through fence and having to kind of keep my distance. But I also definitely wanted to cover the bridge. This is where the brother and sister were hung. This is where supposedly all the haunting stuff begins. But to get down there, his fence is like right up to it. So you have to kind of like shimmy around his fence and then go down to get down underneath this bridge. And there was hornets down there. And it was kind of there was a lot of creepy stuff about this bridge in this town, honestly. True, we went up to people's doors and talked to them, but when we weren't directly trying to access them by going up to their houses, you don't see anyone. There's nobody around. Nobody. And then what's also weird is every time I went down there, the cell service would suddenly disappear. The second that you enter the community,
your phone needs a mobile or Wi-Fi connection.
My phone
first.
signal is completely gone. Cell service gone. Disconnected. My GPS gone. Just everything just stops. I had some problems with the radio even. It was just really, that was weird too. We drove out to the graveyard. Basically, I did all the planning on the first visit. Second time, I go out by myself. I go straight to the graveyard where I'm planning to film and put together the proton pack. And on my way down there, which was this is around 5 o'clock, but keep in mind, we're talking fall, winter time when it gets dark just a little bit after that. So I got like an hour to do all this. But I already know how everything's gonna go together. I just gotta screw it together, screw on the back. We're done. It's good to go. Throw on some stickers. And when I first got there, the weather was fine. It was fine. I leave the highway to go down into the town, and as it always does, everything gets dark. And then as I get into the actual town, clouds suddenly form. And it's instantly like it's gonna start raining. And it feels like it's gonna rain. It's so cold, and it's blowing, and I'm using a lavalier mic, so I'm not sure if I'm even getting my sound. But I gotta get this done. I gotta get it done so I can get it filmed, and once again so I can get it posted in time before Halloween passes. I also brought a table with me and all the stuff I was assembling I brought in a box. So I laid it out really quickly and I start filming and trying to get this done before it starts to rain. Because also the proton pack's completely open in the beginning. I have a lot of electronics and everything else. I don't want it to start raining and ruining my project. So I'm just focusing in. I'm just trying to get it done. I've got my head down. I'm just focusing in. I'm talking as I'm putting things together. And then all of a sudden I hear this loud crashing, breaking noise. And I'm out in the middle of nowhere by myself. And I know that there's things out there. There's been noises this whole time around me. I can hear rustling and things. It's not atypical. You know, there's animals in this area. I know that, but this was a loud crashing noise. Oh man. So I'm not gonna overthink it. I'm just gonna keep on going. I keep putting the thing together, and it starts getting dark fast, like fast. Almost in real time. It becomes completely dark. By the time I go to get to my car, it is completely dark. And as I look out into the darkness and I see all these eyes looking back at me, I realized I probably made a big mistake. The third time when we went back to film the closing scenes, we actually could see them during the light. More than anything, there was deer. There was hundreds. I'd never seen so many deer. I've seen a lot of deer. There was hundreds of deer walking around, which if you're driving out in the middle of nowhere, deer are not a great thing because they just come out of nowhere, you know, and they stop for some stupid reason, or they run straight into you. I mean, in some cases it's worse than hitting another car. It's very bad. It will not only mess up your car, but they've been known to come through the front windshield. It's not a good situation. So we were driving like 2 miles an hour throughout this area. And again, just you saw off to the sides too, the kids are watching, and you could see all these eyes, just all the sizes, not just deer, all sorts of things. Why they have mountain lions in Nebraska, I don't know. But there's a lot of them in fact. And naturally, I mean, it's a smorgasbord of food out there. So if you're with other people, it's usually not a problem. But that second visit, I should not have gone by myself. I know that now. I will not do that again. On the third visit, when we first got there, I was aiming for golden hour for a couple of reasons, because that's when I was going to do the filming of a majority of those final shots. And so what you want is you want good lighting, which is, of course, golden hour is always your best lighting. It's perfect because everything seems lit equally, so there's not a lot of shadows, and that's important if you're planning on darkening it later to make it look like it's nighttime. If you try to film in the dark, then you get that grainy thing going on, even if you're using special cameras for it. So it's better to film kind of during these times, darken it up, change the tint a little bit, and everything looks just the way you'd want it to. And that's how we did it. So the scenes of me walking across the bridge or going underneath the bridge when I'm fighting the ghost, that was all filmed in a much brighter setting. Then afterwards I darkened it up and then turned up a little bit of tint on it, you know, a little bit of blue. And suddenly it looks like a night scene, which is good because by the time we finally got to the graveyard to film those scenes where I'm walking in front of the gravestones, it was dark at that point. So now it's fully dark. In fact, we had to use the headlights to get some closing shots of me, which are way too bright. Didn't look very good for that reason. But at the same time, also, that's why it's grainy when you see me turn on the proton pack and when I'm walking past the gravestones. I had one cameraman on top of the bridge. I had another one. My daughter was actually the one that filmed me down on the ground and did this great walk around using my this is a Samsung S22 camera, so it had good stabilization. And as she walked around things, it looks like I used a drone or something. I mean, it's pretty good vision. I knew I wanted it to stop behind me, looking up at that bridge, and she got it. Did I know what we were going to have me fighting or doing? I didn't know. I didn't know what I was going to be shooting at. I just know I wanted something, or I was going to do something so that it looked like, you know, we were handling something that was on the bridge. That's all the more I knew at that point in time. But going back to lighting, this is also where there's a benefit to filming during that golden hour, because now what I need is, because I'm going to have the proton pack going, I have an actual stream coming out, right, which was just animated. I created that myself, although there's points where through parallax and things you can see that it's kind of flat. I threw in some sparks. You can even see the sparks bouncing off things on the ground, which is pretty cool, and lighting up on the ground. I put in some other, you know, different elements to make it look pretty good. But because I filmed during the day, what I did is I took two shots. So I had one where I didn't affect the darkness at all, and then one where I made it darker and laid them on top of each other. And then I rotoscoped out in some cases, or use the pen tool a little bit more generally to draw out the areas where I wanted it to be lit up. So it looks like, for example, from the ground shot, that there is light in front of me, or that I'm being lit up in the front. And that's just me going through and changing also some of my hue and the colorization, and then revealing that lower level. I've made it flicker a little bit. Looked great. Actually, the hardest thing for us to film was the smoke, because the smoke wasn't working. It was like randomly not working that day because I didn't know a part had come off. So it took us a few times to kind of get a good shot, because it was also pretty light, you know, getting it where it picked it up and made it look good. Again, went back, added sound. That was important. You know, it's all about having the right music, having some sound effects that I added on later on. Actually, the sound that you hear from the proton pack is actually the sound it was making. So I didn't change anything. I just recorded it as we were filming, and then extended that audio all the way through. So that's purely from the pack itself that you're hearing. I didn't have to add that in later. I also had a sound of kind of like a ghost sound. I looked up a lot of different sounds. They said there was one that was called Monster, but it didn't sound very monstrous. It was just something going or something like that. I slowed it down, and it had this nice monstery sound to it. I wanted the reveal to be kind of scary, like you're not expecting it. It's just me walking around. We know there's nothing that could be out there, and then to surprise people by actually seeing something that is something. I didn't know still what. I did find some stock footage of this creature crawling. It's just a creature that's kind of crawling along. And so I superimposed that and then tweaked it. I added some blur to it. I also referenced a lot of the Ghostbusters films and noticed that most of the creatures have some kind of eyes that they're lit, and then they have like this is some kind of weird flare that they put on it. And so I tried to emulate that as much as I could and did multiple layers until it looked just about right to me. It looked more like something that you'd see in Ghostbusters, the original films. Also, I'm wearing glasses. Well, I had these plastic glasses for this. That was another issue. Keep in mind, I am completely blind without my glasses. But I wanted these glasses that I found that looked like Egon's actual glasses, and they weren't easy to find. The downside is I only had the frames. They aren't prescription. So when you see me walking around, I'm walking around completely blind throughout all of this. And of course, any lighting or anything I want isn't on there. That works actually for film though, because I don't want it to reflect the cameras or things I don't want to be seen. So not using lenses and then adding something that looks like lenses later was much better. And that's what I did. So I created a reflection also of this monster crawling toward me inside of my glasses, and then also needed to have a little bit of that beam reflected back as well. So just adding to that realism. Quick note here, this is actually filmed in my backyard, nowhere near the location, with my daughter hitting me with the blow dryer. And up till now, these are some of the things that we've done in relation to Ghostbusters. I'd like to do something cool next year. I'm not sure what it is just yet, but maybe something really cool. If you know something cool, let me know. There's still plenty of other Ghostbusters devices that we could try to make work. Of course, I want to bring up Vince, one of our good friends on our channel. He's a major ghost head. He does a lot of Ghostbusters related things and really cool things. So I don't know, maybe we should hand it over to him. This is my invitation, Vince, for you to make something. I know of a film that he was working on at one point in time. He's been doing some really cool involved things in relation to the real Ghostbusters even. He has a full-size proton pack. He's building a working RC trap. So yeah, be watching his story also as that continues to develop. And we're going to keep on putting out videos like this. Videos that go more in depth on stuff that we've done, how we did it, and some of the crazy things that have happened that really add to the story. So be sure to check out some of our other videos and builds. Make sure that you subscribe and hit that reminder bell so you don't miss some of our future videos. Like, subscribe, comment below. This has been your Geek Fix.